Hi guys, is Lee Anderson as thick as two short planks? Well, I'll let you decide after seeing this clip. So he was back on GB News with his Left in the Corner segment. Look, this is beyond ridiculous. Okay, so he has a left-wing commentator or politician in the corner of the room where they have to shout their answers across the room to Lee and his right-wing guest who are sitting at a separate table. Anyway, they were talking about immigration, and I'll let you decide if Lee Anderson has improved in any way whatsoever.
So, but you're right there. If these countries have got a poor human rights record, Andy, and some of these illegal migrants posing as asylum seekers could be deported back, then surely they will then stop in France.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I don't understand. So Lee Anderson is saying we will take in people who are legitimate, not people who are not legitimate, and people who are not legitimate will be deported back to these unsafe countries. Okay, but this happens all the time. Now, generally people are not sent back to countries that you don't have an agreement with. They'll be sent to maybe another country, or they're not sent back at all. So if the country is unsafe, then why would you be sending people back to it? Like if you're saying that they're not real asylum seekers, okay, they're just economic migrants, then you're going to send them back to a country that's not safe. Even though you're admitting that it's not safe, you're saying, well, if it's such a terrible place, they'll just stay in France. So you're admitting that the places are unsafe. Well, how are you going to get the Supreme Court on board if you're admitting, yeah, we're going to send people to unsafe countries? None of this makes any sense to me.
I don't think so. I think they probably...
You think they still come here?
Well,
they could be deported back to a country that's going to torture them.
Even Emma admitted it's not...
So we're going to deport people to places that they're likely to be tortured, hoping that they'll stop in France. Why would they stop in France? Why would they go to France in the first place? The reason they're going to France is that they have to pass through France to get to Britain. What Lee Anderson is trying to sell is, well, what we can do is we can get France to take all our asylum seekers. Literally everyone, because he's talking about people who have a legitimate claim and people who don't have a legitimate claim. Because he says, well, they're not real asylum seekers, so we're going to send them all back to their home country and then they'll stop in France. So he just wants France to take all British asylum seekers. Well, the thing is, France takes in more asylum seekers than Britain. So he wants France to take even more and Britain 0 for some reason.
Particularly practical or feasible, a lot of things that Nigel said. Something we'll imagine it. I think they'll just see it's a bluff because it is. But I could hardly see, in a reform government in 2029, I can't really see, your man Nigel Farage calling up the Taliban in Afghanistan, going, guys, please take them back. It's not about.
I actually can see that because we're talking about Nigel Farage here. He'd be willing to give them money to take people back. Now, there's a problem here with supporters of Reform UK. Now, maybe not Afghanistan, but other countries. If there are Christians being persecuted in Muslim countries, would Reform UK supporters be okay with sending those people back into places of danger? I presume yes.
About asking them to take them back. It's about deporting people who cross here illegally. If I try to cross into America without filling out endless visa papers and doing all the necessary immigration and the old Nesta, I will not get in. Yeah. There's no question.
So she doesn't understand the difference between an economic migrant and an asylum seeker. You can still claim asylum in the United States. People do it all the time. There's a whole population of people, for example, from countries like Iran, who have claimed asylum in the United States. And they have been welcomed in the United States, maybe until recently. She doesn't understand the difference between an economic migrant who has to fill out a visa and paperwork like that and somebody who's claiming asylum. And also, the United States is not like the United Kingdom, okay? In order to get to the United States, you generally don't cross in a small dinghy.
To JFK or wherever, I'll be put in a room. And they'll wait there and they'll say to me, you've crossed illegally, you've come into our country illegally, and they will send me.
How do you get to the United States in a plane illegally? How do you fly? You understand you need paperwork in order to fly. And airlines will not allow people on unless they have the correct paperwork. So she's suggesting you can get on a plane in London without paperwork, without a passport maybe, fly to the United States, land, and then say, well, I actually don't have the right paperwork, but I want to stay. Like, in what scenario, what world is she living in?
Me back.
But of course, Andy, we give the Taliban regime £150 million a year in foreign aid. So we've got...
This is completely false. He's lying here. It's about £160 million goes to Afghanistan from the UK government. But it doesn't go to the Taliban. It goes to initiatives in Afghanistan. It goes to people and charities and organizations in Afghanistan. It doesn't go to the Taliban. It doesn't go to the central government. It goes to provide education for women and women and girls. It's there to provide support for infrastructure, for charities. It's about providing aid for people, building schools, stuff like this. That's what the foreign aid is going to. It's not going to the Taliban. Now, I don't know if Lee Anderson is lying here or he's just misinformed, but he needs to take this back, because this is not money going to the Taliban. This is an extremely wrong thing to be saying, because it's giving the impression that the British government is in some way propping up the Taliban, which is completely false.
We've got a bit of bargaining power there, so you take them back, otherwise your money stops.
But it's not their money, you frigging idiot. It's support for organizations in Afghanistan. It's not going to the Taliban.
I mean, maybe. I just don't think that would happen.
It's not about maybe. This money is not going to the Taliban. You can't use this as leverage. It's like if somebody is supporting a charity in my area and I'm the mayor, well, we're not going to support that charity anymore. That's no leverage over me, because it's not going into my frigging pocket. Like, I thought most people understood this. Like, Lee Anderson is an exception, but surely this left in the corner guy understands that the money doesn't go to the Taliban. It goes to organizations in Afghanistan to support the most vulnerable people there.
Genuinely, I don't think Nigel Farage really understands the concept of foreign aid.
And you do?
Well, I think probably the government does.
Yeah.
I think Nigel Farage has been this big plan that's going to be really expensive. He's only put 10 billion in for it. That's ridiculous. Yeah. He said, we're just going to leave the ECHR, and that's the key bit of it. We're going to leave the ECHR.
Yeah, we can do. It's quite
it would
simple
take years.
Just hand your notice in.
Well, so you want...
See, I'm sorry, but handing your notice. What you do is you send a strongly worded email to the European Convention on Human Rights, the European Court of Human Rights, and say, we're out. Big letters, we're out. Maybe this works for Reform UK voters and supporters. Oh, you just leave. Remember with Brexit, we don't need to have a deal. We just leave. We just tell them, we bang our fist on the table. We're leaving the European Union. We don't need to care about Northern Ireland or conventions or trade or laws or anything like that. We just leave. Just walk out the door. That's it. Literally, walk out the door. Literally. I'm using literally because this is the only way these people think. They don't understand figuratively. Yeah, we just hand in our notice. Like, bloody hell. This guy is a frigging MP. He was the deputy chairman of the Conservative Party not that long ago. Do you remember that? The deputy chairman of the Conservative Party. And now he's a senior figure within Reform. And he's potentially, if Reform become a government, he could be, my goodness, a foreign secretary or something like that. And he's saying we need to hand in our notice when it comes to the ECHR.
The Good Friday Agreement to collapse.
No, we don't, Andy.
That is what would happen.
Try speaking to the DUPs about that. Emma, you come back.
Let's speak to the DUP about the Good Friday Agreement. The party that voted against it, who were against it at the very beginning, and only jumped on board when they realised, actually, we can have some power. Lee Anderson knows nothing about the Good Friday Agreement, and he knows nothing about Northern Ireland and nothing about the DUP.
You talk about that, how much... Well, for starters, it's not a bluff. Do you think that the people traffickers, are going to be more keen? I mean, when Starmer got in, it was open borders. They just absolutely leapt on...
There isn't a frigging open border. Why do we keep hearing this rhetoric? Open border, open border. Tell businesses that are trying to sell into the EU or businesses that are trying to import from the EU if there's an open border. Tell businesses who are trying to access workers from abroad if there's an open border.
on the boats.
Yeah.
Nigel Farage is not bluffing. And when you talk about the cost of all this,
You said it wasn't practical.
it would
feasible.
save us billions in the
Yeah.
NHS,
Yeah.
in welfare spending, in housing.
A quarter of all staff in the NHS are foreign-born. What do you think would happen to the NHS if you make it more difficult for it to access the workers it needs? And when it comes to the NHS, we're talking about people who are coming in with visas. Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson are talking about asylum seekers here. Asylum seekers are not allowed to work.
In asylum hotels, in education.
And I'll tell you what it will do.
Wasting billions.
Emma,
Yeah.
you're a lady, you're a woman.
Yeah.
You've told me, so I know that. I know your pronouns. But if we detain every single person that comes over the channel, then the sex attacks will stop overnight. Is that true?
I know a lot of women who do not feel safe anymore in their community.
I believe it was about 40% of the people involved in the rioting last year had convictions for domestic abuse. 40%. Now, I don't know how many it is this time, but there seems to be a correlation between people who are at right-wing protests and people who are abusive to their partners. We know that sexual abuse and sexual assault doesn't take place just with immigrants. It takes place within the general population as well. People are more likely to be abused by a family member than a stranger. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying it's more likely to happen. Now, what is Reform UK talking? Are they talking about this? Of course not. They're talking about asylum seekers and migrants. What we need to do is we need to lock them all up so that they're not able to get out. We need to put them in prisons, basically. People who have committed crimes and people who have not committed crimes. What does that say about due process? What does that say about the rule of law? You know, and I've said before, they won't stop here. The likes of Reform will, if they ever get this thing resolved, they will say, okay, now we have to start looking at, well, people who are second or third generation, maybe we should start looking at deporting them as well. They're problematic. We're seeing exactly the same thing with Donald Trump. Denying people, British citizens, their human rights, denying them due process. It's not happening yet because they're obviously not in power, but these people never stop with foreigners. They move on to another group and then another group because they constantly need somebody to be angry with. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this, and I'll see you in the next video.